Welcome to another great episode of Grow Through Positivity. Today I have the honor of having Hananya Glick. Hananya happens to be a neighbor of mine. We are both residents of the Oak and Vine community in Lakewood. Hananya, introduce yourself to the audience, also known as Barry. Take a minute to introduce yourself and we'll get right into the conversation.
Hi, Elie. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Very nice. My name is Hananya Glick. I am a business physical therapist, and throughout the conversation, I think you'll sort of understand sort of what I do, but I'm not here to talk what I do. I'm here to talk about business and growth and helping individuals, leaders, and anybody in the organization from the bottom to the top to succeed.
Excellent. So with that, I want to jump into a framework that I know that you have a lot of experience in. I'm going to put it in my words, but I want you to elaborate in your world what it is. So we have what we call the 5 leadership abilities: simplifying, delegating, predicting, systemizing, and structure. I want you to dive into a little bit of the sense of prioritizing, the importance of that, and how you see that playing out in organizations or those that don't recognize the impact. Maybe we should educate what the takeaways or what the focus should be on, or how to see themselves being able to be a better predictor.
So one of the main things that I see in businesses is the lack of making decisions based on data.
Mm-hmm.
And data is a very important part of any business. If you're a one-man band, even if you're running a large organization, or if you're running a large team in an organization, data helps you make decisions that can be profitable, sometimes can be successful, and sometimes can fail as well. Like this, you made a data point, you made a decision, and then from that decision, it didn't work. So that's also a good data point. So that's what I would say is one of the biggest aspects of anybody in leadership or even in a team, to have documented data.
Awesome. With that document data, if I could just shine on it, like you said, it gives you the clarity around what is working in the organization and what is not working. And what I heard recently from Stephen Chandler, that systems is what is needed, but recognize that data is a system, because if you can't recognize what's not working, how do you know what is working?
That's a very great point, and I'll just elaborate a little more on that. In order to have good data, is, as you do so well, is having good documentation and process in place. So once you have good documentation and process in place, and I would say even communication, the way you communicate, if you have 15 different communication tools in your organization of how you communicate with outside or inside, internally or externally, it's also going to get confusion. What's going on? What's the lead time on a communication? What is the documented communication? Did it work? Did it not work? So I would say that's a very big part of having good processes, as you always do in companies, is having a good communication flow. So if we're doing external communication, use this channel. If you're doing internal communication, use that channel. If you need to have 3 or 4 different communication channels, great. Then there's tools out there to bring everything into one, to funnel it into one place.
Excellent. So we touched on the topic around systems and processes. We know, and I think Jeff Bezos says it the best way, that for him, it was all about 3 specific things in order to be able to bring Amazon to where it is: people, processes, and automation. Now, I don't want to talk about the automation part today because I think it's very unique for every single company. But I think processes and systems is much more of a general concept. Let's go into the people factor. But I want to talk about people, not just like clarity around job descriptions, but I want to talk to you and ask you, what is it about the culture and engaging with the right people, bringing the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins says? Elaborate a little bit of what you see and what you've learned from your past around culture and bringing the right people on.
So that is a very, very good topic to talk about, and it's something that's really only underutilized in business. What I would say the 2 top things is culture and relationships. When there's a good culture, and usually it comes from the leadership, then it goes downstream all the way down till the bottom to the person that's cleaning the toilet. Or the customer service rep that's answering the calls. I can tell you that I had a client that I walked into the store. I haven't met the owner before, and I saw right away that the owner is extremely a calm, cool, and collected person, because that's how the culture was operating, and it's downstream. And the second part is from culture is relationships. Build relationships, cultivate relationships. It can sometimes take 6 months for something to come, or sometimes a year for a relationship to develop. But if you cultivate the relationship, you put in the time and the effort, it's always going to pay out at the end.
Awesome. Let's elaborate. Where and how do you help your clients identify their culture, or how to strengthen a piece of their culture? Because something that you mentioned before, that documenting processes are great, but if we don't have the right people following them, they kind of don't pan out the way it's documented. That's taking it from, a reality to making it work. Talk about a little bit of how do you embrace a leader to be able to push that culture down and share that culture throughout the organization.
So in my role, that's sort of a big part of it, because I'm taking the nitty-gritty parts of a leader and taking care of it for him. So meaning, a lot of organizations have a CEO or a president that's running the organization. If it's a large organization, even if it's a small organization, at the end of the day, the owner is the, like I said, the president, the CEO, and there are certain operational stuff and processes that need to be implemented that usually fall by the wayside, and it falls on his desk, and he cannot take care of it. And that leads to confusion with the people that are working under him, they're working with him, because they don't have any clarity what he wants now, because he's busy with putting out fires sometimes or trying to grow the company. But these processes that you always talk about and that's so important falls by the wayside. So that's my primary role, is putting in these kind of processes. And what happens is, if somebody does not want to adhere to the processes and is not engaged in it, then usually you can identify that it's not going to be somebody that can stay long term. If they have feedback, that's great. Engagement, feedback, brainstorming is something that's also used a lot. You sit down and talk about, okay, this is the issue, that is the issue, how can we fix it? And that usually leads to a better process, because everybody's involved and everybody's engaged.
Working with companies, especially maybe the smaller ones, what can we elaborate and talk about in regards to setting a vision, a 3 to 5 year goal, or for those that are able to set even further out goals, 10 to 20 years out? Where does that play a role in the companies that you work with?
So I would say that a big aspect of it is customer relations. I think that's something that's very underutilized in our in small businesses, especially in our community. Customer relations is very hard. It takes a lot of time, and it can be sometimes grindy and pesky, but that is the key. And I would sort of give you a hypothesis that I have when it comes to customer relations. And if you take the past 20 years, the largest companies that grew out there, I think took that path. For example, Amazon, Tesla. I know they're a cliche to always bring them up as a reference point, but it's really good because they were successful. So I would take even Apple as an example. Apple didn't go the distribution route. They went direct to consumer. They had direct consumer relationships. Tesla did not go. Why were they so successful in the electric market? There's a lot of different reasons, but one of the main reasons that I believe is they went direct to consumer. It was on a website. They did not go through dealerships. The traditional way was a dealership. So a dealership came from the brand. The dealership spoke to the client, and they were just pushing product. They were not pushing the brand. The same thing is with Amazon. Amazon, you can sell on Amazon, but Amazon does not let you have the customer for yourself. They keep the customer. They don't give you any information. So with the age of technology today, the way everything is so accessible and you can have a relationship with your client, it's very important to keep, like, it goes back to relationships and customer customer relationship and business relationship. So it all comes together as one. So you're telling me what's the 1-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. It's sort of see what is your. I'm going to sort of go into a little different subject here. Is what's your average basket? Is that something that you look at? What's your acquisition cost? And that is sort of going to give you a good plan forward on, okay, so if I have X amount of customers, that's bringing me X amount of revenue. In 1 year, how many customers can I get to? Or how can I take my current basket and current customer spend and bring it up by 10%, by 13%, depends on the industry that you're in.
Awesome. That brings us close to the end over here. I want to ask you, are there any books that you recommend to your clients, or has there been a business book that you felt that really, really, really leveled up and, engaged with what you're doing?
Yeah, so the book that I really like is called The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. I would say it's it's a technology book. It's really based on technology, but he does cover a tremendous amount of other businesses as well. And he explains what means network effect. And he explains that every single business out there is technically a network effect. And network effect is a whole nother discussion, if you ever want to do it. But the Andrew Chen was in Uber from the beginning till they became explosive, really large. And he goes through all the iterations, all their problems that they had, all their hardships that they had. And he makes analogous to a lot of old school businesses that sort of use the same technique, and they just use it in technology. So I would say Andrew Chen is this book, the Cold Start Problem, is a good 21st century future-looking business book that can give you real guidance of how you should build your business, how you should build your growth, and how you should build your scale.
Excellent. And with that, we are going to come to a conclude, and we will make sure to have Barry back for a 2.0 and a 3.0. We'll do the networking side. We'll do the technology, because I know Barry has a tremendous amount of wealth in software and technology and all of those areas to help companies scale and simplify. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please help us by liking, commenting, spreading. And if you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to me right here on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to have you on. Barry, thank you so much for making time and coming on as a guest.
Elie, thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure.